All right. Greetings, greetings. Welcome. This is Real Talk, Real People, Real Conversation with Charmaine. And I am here to have the conversation that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And that is one of the things of having this podcast is talking about issues where we can all learn, develop, and grow from. And so today I have a beautiful lady, and today's topic is called From Foster Care to Faith. Naomi Seifullah, Journey to a Resilient, Empowering Women. And let me tell you a little bit about her before I bring her on. Uh, she is a woman of strength, faith, and resilience whose journey from foster care to thriving as a wife, a mother, a woman of faith, serving as an inspired testament to the power of healing and personal growth. As an author of Chicago's Daughter, Naomi shares her story of overcoming adversity and finding hope and purpose through the challenging of upbringing. Her story is a powerful reminder that with faith, determination, and support, every woman can overcome her challenge and create a life of fulfillment and joy. Naomi's mission is to inspire others, especially women who have faced trauma or hardship, to rise above these circumstances and thrive in all areas of life. And let me just say, the reason why I have these ladies coming on to the podcast is because, for those who know, that I am a chaplain and I also work with human trafficking girls. And these are conversations that we need to have so we can help to avoid issues in the future. And so the ladies that's incarcerated do not have the individuals, do not have people, or did not have the individuals that they can go to have these deep conversations. So instead, I have a magazine called Empower Her. And what it is, I have all my podcast speakers and even people who out far who cannot be on podcast can come to the prison and mentor to the ladies. So today we have Naomi Seifullah, and I am going to bring her up to the stage. So here she is, beautiful lady. And we just going to have a natural flow conversation about her journey from foster care to faith and how she goes around the world, inspire people and empower women in her journey. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
You're welcome,
Thank you for
darling.
having me.
So I'm gonna ask you a question. So can you share with us what your childhood was like as a foster child and how it shaped you who you are today?
Okay, so my childhood in foster care was unstable. It was chaotic. It was dysfunctional. But had you asked me at 12 or 17, I wouldn't have seen it that way.
Mhm.
I thought it was normal. I lived in over 9 different foster homes, different strangers' homes, not family members. Well, six strangers, and then at the age of 10. Um, so I got in the foster care system at 5 or 6, and
Okay.
then got bounced around. Um, and it was just chaotic. I would describe it as chaotic. It was dysfunctional. And who it made me at the time was a selfless people pleaser, wallflower, invisible, unworthy,
Mm.
um, which eventually turned into loathing and bitter, angry person.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Okay, all right. Well, that's not who I see today. I just want to just let you know. So, like I
Mhm.
said, you have done amazing, and that's why it's called the Journey to Resilient, and that's why. Now, tell me a little bit about the next one. Question is, what was the turning point in your life when you realized you wanted to overcome the past and build a brighter future for today? I'm sorry, a brighter future for yourself. What was the turning point?
It wasn't until I realized that the past was not the past for me. The past was the future.
Mm.
So while dysfunction and chaos, uh, while I may have been introduced to it and I was originally exposed to it at 10 or what have you, I now adopted it. I absorbed it. I attracted it. I became it. And so I would say in my mid to early 20s, it was a lot of failed. I was a single mother. And I felt like, why is it so difficult for me? Why is it looking like everyone else can have just your basic, simple things in life? And
Mm-hmm.
I just decided to just submit to God. I literally would walk across this Bible in my hallway. I was a Christian at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wanted to die. Like, I literally wanted to die. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm not gonna physically hurt myself, but I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die spiritually. Like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was just the feeling that, perhaps because it was there for since I was young, the past
Mm-hmm.
was haunting me, and it was like getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And so I would say that is realizing that my past at that time wasn't the past. It became my future.
Really, I
It
like
became,
that.
it was my present. It was my present at the
Was
time.
your present? Okay. So help us. So, I never been in that situation, and I deal with a lot of women and who's incarcerated as well, human trafficking, who have been through the journey that you have. So can you help us, for those who don't know, taking it back a little bit, what is your I know you said it was really, can you elaborate a little bit more about jumping from house to house, and how does that make you feel, or how do we entertain another person who have been in that experience? What approach do we go to somebody who have been or have experienced what you have experienced?
um, well, I'm not sure how to approach because everyone's different. Some people
Correct.
really want acknowledgement. Some of
Mm-hmm.
us don't even know, like I was stating earlier, that it is abnormal. It was abnormal for me to see a dead body at 7, or I wasn't 7. I was 5. My uncle's friend. My uncle was murdered with his friend. They were
Mm-hmm.
both murdered together, and one ran in front of my grandparents' house. And I remember everyone running out, and I remember seeing him on the ground. That wasn't normal. It wasn't normal for me to lose my brother.
Mm-hmm.
I had gone to so many funerals, watching my domestic violence, my mother fight her, being separated from my younger brother. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
a child, it's like survival mode,
Mm-hmm.
and people tell you, oh, you're strong because you're
Mm-hmm.
alive, you're existing. So I would maybe I guess it all depends on like how it comes out in their life. So like
Mm-hmm.
for me, it came out with people pleasing. To this day, I struggle with confidence
Mm-hmm.
and trying to not too hard to look not for validation, but to be accepted, because I grew up where it was clear to me, this is not your house. You are
Mm-hmm.
not a part of this family, you
Mm.
know, don't get
Really?
comfortable. And so I have issues with that. I
Okay.
have issues with always feeling like I'm not a part of this family. Even when I came into my own family at 10, 11, I came with an aunt. Um, and it's still like, you're not my daughter though. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
still not a part. So I would say that to kind of help people is kind of like see where, like, if they have trust issues, or anger issues or something, is to kind of like
Mm-hmm.
try to get them to go back as to where they may have picked that up, because they may just think that they're just like, I thought I was just a bitter, I have anger issues, I would say. And I didn't realize that I had the right to be angry when I was little. I just didn't even know how to cry. I just suppressed all my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. And when you say angry issues, like anything could trigger you and you would just be upset?
um when I get older, okay, when I got older, because okay, so I would say from the age of, okay, from 5 to 10, I was in the foster care system,
Okay.
and I was always quiet. Like all my reports, I was always very quiet. I wouldn't say I had a temper at that time. I assume now that I was scared, I was
Mm-hmm.
confused. Um, but in my brain, I was just like, be a good girl. You don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. And then when I got with my family from 10 to about 16-ish, then it was, you're not good enough. So when I was 16, I ran away to go live with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was with my family, that's whom I was compared to. You just like your mom, whispers behind my back. So of course I'm gonna run away. I go see my mother. And my mom didn't teach, if she didn't teach me nothing, but one thing she taught me was to fight.
Okay.
And when she taught me to fight, like mom, I came one time, I live in the projects in Chicago, and these girls had followed me home. I mean, followed me from work. And my mom was like, "You're going to put your hair in a bun and we're going to go to the courtyard and you're going to fight." So
Uh-huh.
when she taught me that, the floodgates. Now, I wasn't a violent person,
Mm-hmm.
but I finally had an avenue. But unfortunately, it was to my detriment because I would get frustrated and break things in my house, or I would cuss a
Mm-hmm.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
I would explode. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a productive, it wasn't like a healthy way to express it. But I finally felt a little bit of power.
Correct, correct. So what it
Mhm.
was is that the 5 to 10 years you was that quiet girl and everything was building up in you. And you know how sometimes even adults, even you probably, sometimes with your kids and your grandkids and you just want to just sit there and just scream and just explode. Well, that's how you were kind of responding in a way that you wanted to release the trauma, release some of the emotions that was in you. So it came out in anger. And then when your mama taught you to fight, you was able to let all that out. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny
Yes.
because it sounds like to me, you know how like sometimes we're taught, we're not supposed to cry, you weak, if you're a punk, if you cry, whatever, you got to be strong. I think that is the wrongest teaching that you can teach anybody. Because again, if we don't cry, what are we doing? We're holding in that pain and everything. And the moment we just cry and let that flood just out, you feel so much better. It just takes away so much pain and relief off of you. So I can relate to that. And so when I even talk to the young ladies, when they have to cry, I tell them, look, release and let it out, because that's the only way it's going to help you feel better and take that burden off. So thank you for sharing that. And I just want to say thank you for number one sharing it, because I know you're being very vulnerable sharing this information. And this is the reason why I like to do this podcast, because these is conversation that nobody wants to talk about. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
I just want to say thank you. And I think the more we talk about it, the more it helps us to even uplift and let more people see the light that's in us. Yes, I had to go through this, but look at me now. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
so now when you said, so you were scared, confused, who wouldn't be from 5 to 10 years old, being in different homes or whatever? Is there now that you're adult, is there anybody that you have made friends with growing up as a kid that you still communicate with, or nobody? Or did they have children your age and in the homes that you went to?
Sometimes, but because I never lived in a home more than a year,
Okay,
uh
okay,
I didn't I did not connect. I went to three different high schools.
okay.
Uh I'm sorry if there's background noise.
It's okay.
Okay. Uh but no, even when I got with my family, I guess you know what, I did have a friend in eighth grade, and I kind of like we reconnected
Mhm.
maybe 15 years ago or so, but we kind of like lost touch.
Okay.
But not really. There wasn't really nobody that, there were people that were there certain times, but no one's carried all the way through.
Okay, okay. Now, I know you mentioned about the Bible really was your faith that really got you through. So, how has your faith played in a role in your healing and your personal growth through your journey? Can you share?
Okay. So yeah, so my healing and my faith. So when I got reunited, when I got with my family at the age of 10,
Hmm.
I actually got reintroduced to my grandmother.
Okay.
So my grandmother was a 4 foot nothing Puerto Rican Caribbean woman who never learned how to read or write, and
Hmm.
she was a Bible thumper. So my father was, who is her son, he was serving jail time. He was in prison for 15 years. And I also had an uncle, she has two sons, my father and my uncle, who was serving life. So the way my grandmother coped with that was she threw herself into religion. She was a diehard Pentecostal. And so when she came and I was exposed to her maybe 7 months. She was God, and taking me to church. Now you fast forward, and whenever I would cross paths with my grandmother, I would have a problem. She would always remind me, well, you don't pray. Well, where's God? And I'm like, what does that have to do with running out of gas? What does that have to do with? That's everything, you know? And I was like, you know, so when I started to have my breakdowns, uh, it's just that whispered to me. And that's why I was like, you kind of tried everything else, like try God, try God. And yeah, it started with me just reading the Bible. Um, and I would also say that another aha moment was I started to see in my anger, I was taking it out on my kids. So I was my mother. I mean, it may not have been in the same way or the same extremity, but I felt like I inherited. And as I have gone back into my family's history, this has been going on. We don't talk about it. Moms are perfect in our community, which that needs to stop. You know, the moms where we make mistakes also. So it wasn't until I realized I don't want to do to my children. I don't want to pass this on to. I don't want to be so consumed in myself that I don't see them, and then they're gonna walk around and repeat the story, and but yeah, faith was what I found to be a way out, at least a starting point.
Okay, okay. I love that because of listening to you, grandma was your example of and listening to you, hearing everything that grandmom had to go through with her son and everybody being incarcerated. And that had to take a lot on a mother just overall. I have a sister who have two boys that's incarcerated, and it really bothered her mentally and emotionally because sometimes mothers really blame themselves because their child is incarcerated. So listening to your grandmother, how she put God first in everything, that was preparing you of helping you to overcome these here obstacles that you had to go on through life because you really didn't have no upbringing. So
Uh-uh.
she was teaching you to put God first in everything. So thank you for sharing that because that even happened to me as me growing up being a teen mom. I was abandoned as well. My dad, he didn't want to play a part in it because he was embarrassed. My grandmother. So it was like my mother was there, but she was there pretty much just doing whatever she had to do to take care of us. But I didn't have that teaching. And so I had to trust in God. And God was my peace, my everything to help me to get through what I had to get through as a teen mom. So thank you for sharing that because I think that is so important, especially us as young ladies who's growing up, and it's okay, it might kind of seem foreign because not everybody's talking about God at that young age, but somehow for us to survive, to get through, that's what we have to
Yeah.
do. So yeah,
And,
go ahead, I'm
and
sorry.
thank you for sharing that because I think that showing your wounds,
Mm-hmm.
there's a passage in Psalms where Prophet David says like true friendship comes when people show their wounds.
Yes.
Like that. I think that's even healing. Even my grandmother, with as spiritual as she was, I found out later that she had her first child at 15. I wish she would have
Mm,
warned me. I wish she would have told me.
okay.
Like, but yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so now you mentioned about that you feel though that you take some of you took some of your frustration out on your children. What age were you when you had your first child?
I was 18.
18. Okay. Okay. And
Yes.
can you share with that now that you're a mother? You didn't have that growing up in your life, but now 18, you get the opportunity to try to nurture and love this child. So can you share what that looks like coming from your background?
It was chaos. So
Oh,
it
okay.
was chaos. So I again, this is the danger of children being raised with instability
Mm-hmm.
because that becomes familiar to us.
Mm-hmm.
Instability, anything healthy or stable comes across as boring. So when I was with my mother, we didn't get along because I had run away. I had a warrant for my arrest. I had already failed the seventh grade. I didn't feel smart. I didn't think of education or anything like that. So what I did was the first little boy who liked me, I got pregnant so that his family can be my family. And that's what happened. So we didn't work out. We were way too young, but his mother kind of became my mother. She, let me live with her. she didn't have much to offer. Like, our community is just, unrecognized, unacknowledged trauma. But she, my mother would have left me in the street. Nobody in my family cared. My father was in prison. Even my grandparents at the time, my grandmother, they were back and forth with their own stuff. So I turned a bad situation worse. Of course, my child is a blessing, but I went from bad to worse. With now you have a child, and I thought, well, now I belong. Now I'm part of a family, But then it's like, no, you have responsibilities now. Now you have someone that's going to depend on you. So it became a wake up call. I hadn't no experience with children. I wanted to be a good mother. But it just became chaotic, because now it started with me holding on to forcing his father to be with me. How could you do this to me? How can you abandon me? You and I come from this drama. We have to be together. And that went on for years. Like, too many, just, so I turned a bad situation, into a worse situation, I would say. And I think because I didn't have anyone to interrupt. Nobody, I'm not, judging or knocking people, but I never met anyone that graduated high school. I never met anyone with college degrees. Not until I got older. So that's why I want to share my story, to interrupt. And if it's someone younger and they may say, well, I don't have this and I don't have that, I want to say that don't make life decisions based on reacting, to your current circumstances. Your circumstances are going to change, but if you make certain moves, they may be permanent and you may not be able to undo them. So just hold on and just, have faith. And depending on the person, just try to encourage, especially, young girls, to slow down and to pause, and not to be afraid to ask for the help, and to acknowledge that it, to give them the permission to seek the help. Because I always felt like what I went through was nothing. I know sisters who've been raped, who've been the horror stories, and I'm like, I didn't go through anything. So we're also made to feel we minimalize our wounds. We minimalize them, we ignore them, even other people will tell you, oh, it ain't that bad. So what? Your dad's in jail? At least you have one. You're like, oh, okay, I guess. So
And listen, and I get everything that you're saying. You're right on point. But I have a question. Knowing, coming from your background and not really having that support, what make you think that what you did, you mentioned you went from bad to worse. I get that you're saying that you wanted that family. Yes, you were pregnant, but I don't see anything of worse. It was just something that you wanted, that you were taking that child along with you so you can be able to have the family that you want. Right? And so when you say worse, what part was worse?
I would say worse because I wasted time in trying to have this relationship with the father.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't work on myself. I went back, I did get my GED, but I didn't. I saw in the community that I saw and came from, women just prayed to be a wife. That's it, So I wasted time trying to be in this relationship. And then I ended up with another child. So now I have two. And then when I do go and try to get a job, my children are put into daycare centers. They're having, emotional trauma. So now I'm like, I have you, but I can't take care of you, and I have to pay someone else, but you don't like them. And it just made me feel worse. Plus, I'm uneducated. And I'm not gonna get. I would at the time I always got paid minimum wage. Now I'm poor. Now it's cemented. So that was like the hole I felt myself kind of trapped in.
Okay. And so that's when you say from bad to worse. I got it, because you didn't have the means to take care of the baby. So you feel like, look, I was in a bad situation. Now I even made it worse because I couldn't be that mother who I wanted to be, and the father wasn't there to support. I got it. So ask your question. So come back a little bit. So now you got your babies, and now you said from 10 to 16, you live with your family. And so how was that with your family? And I know you mentioned a word that you wasn't good enough. So they didn't look at you, or they didn't value they didn't value who you truly was because of your background or because of your mother?
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
That's
So
okay.
when I was so at 10, I had an aunt, my father's oldest sister. She was estranged from the family at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and she had reached out to him, and she assumed that she knew her brother was in prison, but she assumed that we were with my mother's side of the family. Or so when she found out that we were in foster care, she actually got my I have an older brother that I was reunited with at 10. She got
Okay.
me. And so when I got with her, I would say my aunt was and her name was Judy. So my aunt Judy, she was kind. However, she was single and she worked all the time. And at this time I was moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So after my grandma left, she took my grandma. She stayed for a while, picked up my brother, took him back. So I was kind of neglected. Like it wasn't her. She had to work. So
Mm-hmm.
that was when I started to have. I was very self conscious. I skipped school. I failed the seventh grade because I never went.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of by myself. So then at 12, I was with her for about 2 years, and then I moved in with another aunt, her other sister. Now she was the one that was like, "Listen, I have 3 kids, I have a husband. I'm taking you back to Illinois. You'll be closer to your father and your brothers and things of that nature." And at first it was nice because I had my cousins who are about my same age, but then it wasn't nice. Then it was really cold. I would, be compared to my mother. Uh, little my cousins would say stuff on the sly. Um, like let's just say like racist names, racial names, and she straight up neglected me. Like I didn't have and I didn't even had I known then what I know now, the common child would just be like, "Hello, where are my school supplies?" Like in a respectful manner, or at least reach out to my caseworker. I didn't know. I'm like, "What's going on? I've never been without your basics. I've never been without deodorant. I've never been without like a layaway. Back in the day, we had a layaway, for school. I never had, and so she took it from me already feeling not as a part of. She took it from me feeling unworthy of it. And so that's why I didn't internalize it as, you're doing something wrong. I internalized it as, oh, well, maybe I'm expecting something. And so then from there, I was with her for about 2 years. And then I forget what happened. My caseworkers kind of like left me. I'm not gonna say abandoned me. They assumed I was well. By the time my caseworker checked up on me, I was failing the 8th grade again. I was gonna having to go to a summer school. So to make a long story short, she was like, that was the first time someone looked at me as a kid and was like, "What do you want? Where do you want to go? You're gonna end up in a group home." Not because I had a behavioral problem. I never had a behavioral problem, but she's like, "You can't stay here. You have no clothes. There is no food in this house for you. Where do you want to go?" And I was like, "I want to go with my grandma." So I went, I go with my grandmother, and now I'm like 14, 15. And I was with her and my grandfather and my brother, and we moved to Dixon to be closer to Dixon, Illinois, to be closer to my father in prison. I just think I just got overwhelmed without realizing at the time. My father was always about visit me in jail and tell me everything. And I just felt overwhelmed that one, my grandfather, may God give him Jannah. I found out later through my case records that he actually, I don't know how, but he found my mother and he reached out to her and he said, this girl is so depressed. Can you call her for her birthday? So sorry.
No apologies. No apologies. That's just still a little bit of that pain still there, but it's okay. You let them tears fall.
Yeah. So on my 16th birthday, my
Uh-huh.
grandfather did not let me use the phone. He was so strict. And he was like, "You have a phone call." And I was like, "Is it my father?" And
Uh-huh.
it was my mother. And I was
Mhm.
just like, "Oh, where are you? And where have you been?" And I had forgotten what she looked like.
Mhm.
I hadn't seen her since I was a little kid. And I forget who initiated it. It could have been me. Like, "Come get me. Come get me. I want to be with my mom." And
Uh-huh.
my grandparents were like, "No, like, my grandma literally told me, like, you go when you can defend yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
go when you're a woman to yourself. You have something to offer your mother. You have nothing to offer her. You can't defend yourself. And I didn't understand. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was when I ran away. I was like, I don't care what y'all say. Everybody else can have mom. Why I can't have mom? And I don't know what the projects was. This is the 90s, mid 90s. So I go with my mom, and I learned the hard way that she was just as, if not more damaged and hurt as
Mm-hmm.
I was. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing. But you mentioned a lot of things, and your aunt, and what you mentioned is what I hear a lot sometimes, where a child of a family goes into the foster system, and because the family is not close, some of the other family who can probably take you on wasn't aware of it. So here auntie finds out, like, wait a minute, hold up, we got my niece in here. And so that was beautiful how she reached out and brought you and your brother and everybody all together. So that was
yes,
really wonderful. And I think more families need to come together so they can know what's going on, because there is a lot of our families is separated and nobody's telling nobody because of shame, embarrassed, or whatever. You know what I mean? We try to
yes,
keep things secretly and don't realize how there's people coming and take our family. So that was good. And then it sounded like, even knowing that you're now with your family, you still felt like, they didn't treat me good. I felt like I'm still back in the system being with other strangers, and that's what I got from you, and that's not good, especially when you're with your family. But I think sometimes God will put us in different situations for us to learn and to grow from different challenges. And so now you're 16, you with your mother and everything, and you kind of elaborate a little bit. Mom taught you how to fight. You had your two children, and so now we're already 30 minutes in, and I know your book is all about your journey. So let's talk about your book. What inspired you to write your book called Chicago Daughters, and what message do you hope the readers take away from it? And kind of just elaborate, because I know I looked through it and you got case studies and this and that. So please talk to us
oh
about
yeah. So I feel that because I didn't realize this at the time,
it. Mm-hmm.
but I now notice that because I have lived, like God had put me in situations that I lived in many people's homes. I was a fly on the wall. So I have seen many dynamics of families that a lot of people have not. And so I I I learned a lot. I think I was a little bit more self-aware than some people my age at the time. And so whenever I would give any advice, I see, while I was bad about myself, I was a cheerleader for everyone else. Like I am down. Like, if you're my friend, I am down. I'm your biggest supporter. And so my past will pop up, like, well, why you can't call your mom? Or, well, where's your father? Or, where's this and where's that? And that little nudge of bitterness, because I was still stuck. While I still can, like, when I started my journey with God and church at the time, it gave me hope. I have hope. And that's my grandmother's name. Her name is Esperanza. Her literal name is literally Hope. So it was full circle. So but I still felt like people couldn't understand, like, okay, well, how do you know this, or where is this coming from, or what gives you the authority to speak? Because I'm very sensitive to children. Like, if I see a child being neglected, something as minor of, like, having shoes that don't fit at school, and I'm like, you know I'm sensitive to that. So I was like, you know what, I need to share my story, not just to give my how I got this information, but at the time, I didn't have the answers. I didn't know why I was in the foster care system. I had heard rumors. I didn't know why I was moved around, why I was separated from my brother. I just had heard rumors. I didn't even know people got paid for taking care of foster kids. I didn't know that, because, as crazy as it sounds, and wallahi is the truth, I was treated worse with my second aunts than foster care. Because in
Mm-hmm.
foster care, they let me be a kid to an extent. I was in band, I was in a parade, I did things. And when I got with my aunt, it was none of that. I'm not signing nothing for you. I'm not doing nothing. It was that. So And it was also me defending that little girl. I feel like that little girl in me was like, you know, like needed to confront, needed to confront. Because there was one time where that aunt, and may God forgive her because she had her own issues. She had marital problems, and I'm sure of it, and just issues. I mean, I had expressed to another family member that had I not left, I say, man, what my life would have been like if I would have never left Michigan. Like I felt bad if and it got back to my second aunt, and she was like, "Oh, I heard." I'm paraphrasing that you went around and you're saying that it's my fault that you were that you were a single mom, that it was my fault. And she kind of caught me off guard and was so defensive of it. I was like, no, I didn't say that. Like, I didn't say that, but that right there was a reminder of don't you dare. Who are you? And so this book was like, I dare. Like I dare. So it was just like
You're like,
I dare.
it's like, enough. I'm coming out with the truth.
Yeah.
I'm not shutting up no more. It is what it is. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's really generational cycles. It goes back to my grandparents and my parents being exposed to alcoholic fathers who were domestically abused, both of them to my grandmothers, and and people get older and they clean up nice, and then they look at the younger generation and say, "What's wrong with you? We're only doing what you taught us. We're only doing what we were exposed to."
Absolutely. So real fast. So now that you're older, now you wrote your book and you did your research. Now do you know why you happened to be in foster care? What was your reason or what happened?
Yeah, I was in foster care for abuse. My mother, by the time she was 20, she had four children back to back. She had her first at 17, me at 18, my other brother 19, back to back. And there was between me and my youngest brother, there was a brother when my mother was pregnant, um, and he had passed away at 22 months old. And so I'm not sure if it was an accident, if he fell. I'm not sure of that. But that my mother was already um, the system had like DCFS was already at her door before I was born, and that it wasn't until my brother passed away that they took us away from her and gave us to her mother. But there was chaos in my grandma's house also, and so I found that out. I also found out reports that people would say about me. That's where I would see things like, oh, she's conniving like her mother. um but one amazing thing that I saw that it just like people should never underestimate seeing children for who they are, was that all my report cards were in there, and there was a teacher, I don't know if I was in fifth grade. No, actually, it was when I was with that second aunt. It was saying like this um, Naomi is not, like, she could tell I wasn't focused. Naomi is in here, and she said, I hope she has support at home. I think if Naomi had, but did she look into it? Did she ask me? Did she, you know, so that made me feel good. It made me feel like I wasn't this bad child that just, you know,
And I think that's really good that you went back and you kind of like you went back to connect these dots. Why did I end up being in a foster program when I had my aunts, I got my family, my everybody know where my mother at, and now you get to see the bigger story. Like you said, even before I was home, DCF was already there, and so you really didn't have an opportunity because mom was already dealing with something from family, passed down generational curse. She was already dealing with something, but no, she didn't have nobody to go and help her to get out of whatever she got herself into. And then that's what happened to you. Then you end up getting into the system, and then you mentioned you have four siblings. One passed away, sorry to hear that, but you have three more siblings.
yeah. Well, I had when we got put into the system, my mother, she had my daughter. She had my sister. She had my sister. So I have a younger sister, and so it's my older brother, and he, unfortunately. because of all the drama and statistics and making bad decisions, he's in prison. He has a lifestyle where he's in prison and he struggles with mental
Okay.
illness. And my younger brother, the one that we went into the foster care system, he was determined to not be a statistic.
Mm-hmm.
He was raised in a group home. They separated us. He was the first to graduate high school. He would have been the first to graduate college, but instead he went to the Air Force
Okay.
and he got married and he moved to Utah. And then unfortunately, he was murdered.
Oh, so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
And what about your
So,
sister?
my sister, she's married. Her father, my mother, got with her father, and when she was 1 years old, her father was shot to death.
Mm.
There's just a lot of murder. There's a lot of murder. There's a lot of tragedy on that side of the family. So my sister, she had not to tell her story, but she had my nephew when she was 14,
Hmm.
and she overcame her own battles today. She, her and her husband, they own their home. They live in Indiana. They have their children.
Okay.
So
That's beautiful. And so you and your sister, y'all connect a lot? Do y'all get together?
we try because I'm in California and she's in Indiana, and we weren't raised together. We're 6 years apart, maybe 7 years apart. So it wasn't even until recently when when I started working on my own book, that I
Mm-hmm.
even apologized to her and said, I'm sorry if I missed anything, that as your big sister, I'm sorry
Hmm.
that I was so consumed with my things. I wasn't a better example. I wasn't there. I just wanted to acknowledge that for her.
Hmm.
So we're trying to get closer.
That's good. That's good. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I like how you said you was a fly on the wall. You was a fly on the wall, girl. She said, "Look, I've seen a lot of situations." So now my next question. So we talked about the book, and it said, "Okay, so what was some of the most significant challenge you faced in your transition from foster to adulthood, and how did you overcome them?" I think you kind of elaborate on that a little bit. So tell us a little bit more. I know you have a huge family now. You have more than just two kids. So can you elaborate how many children you have? And you're married, right?
Yes, yep. So I have 5 children,
Okay.
and I'm married, alhamdulillah. Um, and I would say the biggest challenge that I had
Mm-hmm.
with from the foster care to the faith, where it was working on myself. Like there is no avoiding that part. Like, okay, I'm working on my cursing, and I'm working on my temper, and I'm praying and things of that nature. But it was working on myself, and I felt like I wasn't educated enough, or I wasn't professional enough, or what do I want to be? What kind of businesses do I want to have? That was a challenge. Was, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because you were so much on survival mode. You didn't know. I didn't know that I like hiking. I didn't know that I like swimming. I didn't know that and so that was the challenge, was to be open to learning something new, and to not be afraid, not to be afraid of feeling unworthy. That's my thing. So, and I kind of still struggle with that. It's kind of like pushing myself out there. But that was the biggest challenge, is finishing school, doing things for myself, not just as a mother or a wife. Do things for myself. What do I want to do? What do I want to be?
Okay, I have a question for you because I deal with a lot of women and who don't know how to feel worthy based on their background. So for you to work on yourself, was there somebody that came into your life to introduce some of these things to you so you can feel like, oh, I like hiking. Oh, and more or less take you out of survival mode, but put you into the mode where now I have to do for self. Now I have to thrive and be excellent and stand in my authentic self, who I am. Who was that person that came into your life to help you to find your way?
I would say, ultimately it was my husband, but it
Okay.
was like I had starters, which was the church, which were, I would listen to speakers, I would listen to old school Juanita Bynum,
Mm-hmm.
and these messages of you can make it, and
Mm-hmm.
stop making excuses for yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
stop being lazy. And I
Mm-hmm.
know I know you've been through some stuff, but you don't have to be what you've been through. You don't have to be that. And just those messages in that way, and being around other people of faith, um who were also they were also vulnerable. I think they gave me permission to kind of like be whole about it. I used to be embarrassed about being in the foster care system. I used to be embarrassed about having a parent in prison. And not that it was now my identity, but I was like, okay, and then I felt like I became healthy enough to then when I met my husband, then it was like take it to another level of like, let's move to California,
Mm-hmm.
let's, you don't, I don't know how to swim. What do you want to learn?
Mm-hmm.
You're not too old to learn, and but faith in God just taught me to be open-minded, to submit, not to just anything, of course, something healthy and people that are healthy, but I feel like you have to like, get off of that survival mode. It's going to age you. It's going to make you die faster. It's going to make you more prone to illnesses, and you can't change the past. You have to see things through a new lens. So now when I
Mm-hmm.
look at my past, I think of Yusuf alayhi salam. I think of Prophet Joseph, peace be
Mm-hmm.
upon him. I think of who had to be taken away from his family as a child, or Abraham, peace be upon him, who had a parent that was not safe for him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Beautiful. So, so now, based on what you were just sharing, I had a question and it lost me. I'm trying to see if I got want it back here. So now, so you came from Christianity and you went to El Islam. What age did you transition, and what made you do the transition?
I would was it I would say in my early 30s, 31, 32.
Okay.
So because when my grandmother came, I had been reading the Bible since I was 10 in Spanish. It started off in Spanish. And so I was and I love reading. I love history. Naomi is in the Bible, in the book of Ruth, So I was exposed to that. So when I started to get serious about my healing with faith, I didn't want to just say, God, help me. I require discipline. I'm the type of person, I require order, because my life was so chaotic. I can't just be agnostic and just go with it. No, no, no. I need rules. I need to know how to pray. I need to have that in order to feel some sanity. So with the Christianity, it kind of builds me up. It made me feel love. But at some point I felt like something was missing. And so the more I focused on Jesus, peace be upon him, I even got to the point where, and this is where I started going to school. My education was, I wanted to go to seminary school, and I was like, oh, I'm going to read the original Bible. I'm going to read the Hebrew, the Aramaic, the Greek. So I had I had started to read the Bible, and I started on that path, and I started to see kind of the differences, but the book of Jeremiah says no Christmas tree, but we have a Christmas tree. I worked in ministry. I literally worked as a community counselor for a Christian mission in Grand Rapids. So I started to see these differences. The Bible didn't match, the church didn't match the Bible. The Christians didn't match the Bible. The Jesus didn't match the Bible. But number one, first and foremost, I'm like, well, if I'm saved, what's next? Like, I like there wasn't I didn't feel guided. I didn't feel guided. And so what started off as curiosity, what started off with, what, maybe I need a break. Maybe I need to just look into other things, because I've always loved cultures. And I knew, for one point, I thought maybe I'm supposed to be Jewish because I'm following Jesus. He was Jewish. Then I'm like, no. Then I said, well, Jesus is only other mentioned in Islam. And so I started to look into that, and that's kind of how it started. And that's also how my husband and I met, because I was like, oh, is there a mosque? Is there a masjid? And but it started off with just being curious. I never, if you would have asked me then, I'm not going to be a Muslim, And then it's like, oh, I like this praying 5 times a day because I found everything in the Bible. The fasting, the praying, the wudu. I found everything. I'm like, wow. Oh, Prophet David, peace be upon him, used to raise the sun. That's Fajr. Oh, wudu. Jesus used to make wudu. Like, I saw everything. And it wasn't until a while that I was like, girl, stop lying. You're a Muslim. So, and like, it was never my intent, but it just kind of like went there.
Okay, well, next time I see you, or next time we connect, you got to tell me, where did Jesus do voodoo in the Bible? And it's interesting because you converted when you were 31. I converted when I was 30, and the same thing for me is like I was raised in a Christian home, but it's like it seemed like by the time I got 30, and I was a teen mom, so it was always putting God first and everything to navigate me, and I would read the Bible. It was my daily reading and everything, but I just felt like there was so more. And I love how you said if I'm saved, what's next, right? Here it is, we young, and we listening to the older people, and they keep talking about this and that, and it's like, wait a minute, isn't there more to life? So for me, it was all about more to life. I wanted to, like, it got to be something else better than this day-to-day getting up 9 to 5 doing all this other stuff, right? And then that's when I was introduced to Islam. And then once I started going to 7-Day Adventist, trying to fill this void, okay, no, that's not it. Going to different denominations and trying to find that void, and I could not. And once I came to a mosque and I seen the way the imam is speaking and the sisters and brothers and how I said, this is home. This is for me. And it gave me that discipline. And so, yeah, so I can definitely resonate with you on that. But I'm still learning a lot of the stories comparing to the Bible and to Islam, because I know it's like a river, it's like, and then even when the ladies in the county jail, it's the same way. Look, I'm a raised and born as Christian, Catholic. I'm curious. What is this about Islam? Teach me this different. And so, I get them on that journey, and so, but thank you, alhamdulillah, thank you for sharing that. And that maybe that's the same thing. They said, okay, now that I'm saved, what's next? And sometimes if you don't know what's next, you can get lost. And like you mentioned, you wanted to take a break. How many other people take a break?
Yes.
Take a break, but they can take a break and get to the wrong direction, then they fall off, right? And then they got to find themselves back into having faith. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. That was definitely a eye opener for me. Okay. The next question that I have for you, it says, how do you use your platform as an author and a speaker to inspire, to empower other women, particularly those who may be facing difficult circumstances? And I know you kind of well known in the community, especially your husband. So I know women probably come to you and ask you for guidance.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I try to use my platform to just encourage once again that, that we stop making excuses. You have a moment where you're sad. You might have a moment where you realize, like for me, when even when I was working on my book, it was very difficult because I couldn't believe that I had those experiences. When I read the reports and when I go back and I even retell the story, I get so mad for that little girl. I feel so disattached. But I just want to give people permission to go there. I want to give them permission to sit with their inner child if that's what needs be, to acknowledge it. But then at some point, you have to keep it. You have to get those jewels because you were put in that position for a reason. I now realize that, Allah knows the best. I was chosen, or whatever the word you want to use, to interrupt this. It didn't work with this generation. All right, next generation. Saying, thank God I didn't end up in jail or on drugs or anything like that. So I think that when I think of children in the foster care system, as back in the day, I would say I was abandoned. No, you weren't abandoned. You were rescued. You were chosen to break a cycle, do something different. So if you say, well, my parents are this, okay, obviously God sees you as so important that he wanted you to himself, that he wanted you in a special, circumstance. Like you are learning, like our training for who, I guess, what message or whatever God created us to be started a lot earlier, So I just want to encourage people to give themselves permission to acknowledge that, but then at the same time, use it to help someone else. Don't sit in it, because then when you sit in it, you're now going to do to others. You will be that chaos in someone else's life. You will be my aunt. You will, because that's what pain does. Like they say, hurt people hurt people.
I just love it. I love it. You said I was chosen to interrupt the generation, and I love it. And you were here to interrupt the past, the present, and the future. And you are the chosen one. I believe I am the chosen one as well. That is the reason why we do what we do. You know what I'm saying? And for you to continue to share your message. And so, question for you: have you met any other females? Almost kind of like the question I just asked you, but I'm just want to know: have you met any females who kind of came through the foster system as well, to help them to know who they are so they can move forward? Have you came across any women like that and they share their story and you guide them?
Um, yeah, well, my I have a daughter-in-law actually, and it wasn't as quite traumatic, but she her mother abandoned her, her father wasn't around. She got in the foster care system in a way, like she went into a group home, she had a baby, and through, when she was married to my son, at first when you see people, you're like, these people, they're crazy, they're this or that. But I was able to recognize, hold on a second, you know, you don't know how to have, some of us don't know how to have relationships with other women because we were never mothered. When you're not mothered and you're not nurtured, you lack patience for children. And so you might think, and so when you lack patience for children, this is at least was my experience. Now you're like, you're beating yourself up. So at first, like I would tell, and this wasn't the case for her, I'm just using this as an example, is that like I try to, when I see her or anyone that, because I don't know of many because I haven't really been out there, but I just always try to remind them to like have grace for themselves. When you get frustrated, you don't know what to do. Remind yourself that you weren't taught this. Some of us are ashamed that we don't know basic things. We're ashamed. So when another woman especially comes into your life and it's trying to kick knowledge to you or whatever, you're defensive, and it's just like, no, it's okay, like you can trust. Or if we have an argument, it doesn't mean that I'm gonna abandon you. It doesn't mean like, so little things like that. I like try to remind that they have an open mind to learn something new, not necessarily from me, but don't come from a place of pain. There's a difference between being careful and protecting yourself, and then there's a place of just being defensive because you're still in that wounded place that will then become a prison.
Well, that's good. And how's that come along for her? You see
Oh
progress?
yeah. Oh, I mean, my daughter-in-law, she's awesome. I just
Good.
that. But I do have cousins. I have cousins who are in the foster care system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of us didn't survive. I have a cousin. She had 5 kids, and then her mom took her kids. And while she was going through her ordeal, the older generation were like, "Look at her. She's this. She's that." And it wasn't until I got older and I got our records, and I was like, "No, y'all neglected her. She was in a hello." Like, and it got to the point where I had to tell my parents, "You have no idea what it's like to not have parents.
Mm-hmm.
You have
Mm-hmm.
no idea what it's like to not have anyone show up for you on report card day or a grad." I had for my 8th grade graduation, my aunt told my uncle to just drop me off because I wasn't gonna get a diploma anyways. You know, like my classmates were like crying for me, and at the time I didn't get it. I was like, "Why are you crying? I'm by myself." They're like, "No one is here for you on graduation day."
Mm-hmm.
Naomi, this is sad. So
Wow, well that's beautiful. So I mean, just listening to you, you already disrupted the generation in your own family, and for you to be able to share your book, share your story with those from the past, and then having your own children, you already disregarded that curse. You know what I'm saying? Because you're there raising your children, and now I know you have a daughter that you have two granddaughters or one? You have one.
I have 2 granddaughters, but my daughter has a daughter also, and my
Okay,
son has a daughter. Yes,
and you see how you already shift that whole next generation. So just keep doing what you're doing, and it's beautiful when you can be
alhamdulillah.
able to break that generation curse and be the example of it. You know what I'm saying? Because those in the past, sound like a lot of the family member children had to go through the system, so they had to go through that journey. But we all go through the journey for a reason. But just one thing, I would love to invite you to come inside the prison or the county jail with me to share, because I have a lot of young ladies who have experienced the foster system, and they always say, "Look, I didn't have anybody to show me how to be a mother. I don't have nobody to show me how, to do finance and get my bills together." That's why I teach them a little bit about finance in the jail. It's always, I didn't have enough. And so now they're reading a lot of different books to help them so they can be open minded, and
Mm,
you mentioned about you used to always be the cheerleader for everybody else because you couldn't find you. You didn't know who you are. And that's what sometimes we don't realize when we go cheerleading everybody else. And I was the same way, cheerleading everybody else because you don't know who you are. I had one lady, she said, you know what, now that I realize it's all about me now, I got to take this time while I'm in here and focus on me, spend the time with me. And I was so excited because I said, you finally get it. You know what I'm saying? And she was the one who was from the foster system, and she has two
Mm.
twins. And but anyway, I would love for you to come. If not this month, let me know when your open moment. But one last question. Well, I actually got two questions. What will you say to other females who kind of walk your journey? And I know you kind of said it in your talk, but one last comment that you would share with your younger self as well with any other one who haven't found themselves dealing with foster system.
Okay. Uh, what I would tell myself is what you're looking for is inside of you. What you're looking for is not out there. It's not out there. You're going to delay the process. You're going to make it more chaotic and more dysfunctional than it needs to be. You need to, what you're looking for is you have everything that you need right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then one last question. That was good. How did they find? How did you find it so they can find it?
I found it with submitting to God, as cliche as that sounds, because I discovered, at least for me. So, for example, and I'm going to use the church because that was what my walk was. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, as women, we're beautiful, whether it's inside out. We God made men a certain way, he made women in a certain way, and when you're raised in that struggle, we're just so tight and masculine, we may not even realize it, even if we look pretty, but we're not in tune with our petals. We don't know our colors. We're not blooming. We're not in the sun. We think we're weeds. We think we're ugly. And so for me, I started reading the Bible. So I discovered that I loved history, and I discovered, I love gospel music. And some women, they'll sing and they'll find their peace in that. Some women like to teach, and, I will do Bible studies. So I would say that they have to, in finding God, you will find yourself. It
Yeah.
is a process because the cleanup is messy. And so for me, the book for me was my cleanup. Before you can buy something new, you have to get rid of the old. You have to get, because it's going to corrupt it. It's going to contaminate it. It's going to contaminate it. And of course, it's a continual thing. But, it's like, be open to submitting to God and stop controlling things. Stop. You can only control what your actions and your react. Accept what is, and try to find happiness in the right now. If nothing changed, try to find the happiness in the right now.
Well, thank you, beautiful, for sharing. Thank you for being
Thank you.
vulnerable. Thank you for opening up and sharing your journey with all of us. I mean, it is so well needed. You don't hear people talk about anything positive when talking about the foster system. Is always the negative. And you are a truly example of letting people know that, hey, yes, I went through it, and I'm able to thrive and live my best life, be an author, and teach people that is not a bad thing. Everything we go through in life, it is here to teach us, to elevate us, and for us to grow so we can live and change the next generation. You know what I'm saying? And that's exactly what you did. So, not to take away anything that you said, thank you
Thank
again for all
you.
your
Thank you.
highlight moments and everything of sharing with us. And I know we'll be talking soon. And with that being said, I will connect with you. God bless, and talk to you later, sweetie. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome,
Okay.
darling. Thank you for this opportunity to share your story.
Thank you for
And then,
having me.
now I know you have a podcast. You on Facebook? Anything how people can find you if they want to talk to you or get more information?
Well,
Anything?
I have a YouTube channel for now. That's all that I have yet. It's Naomi Seifullah at you on YouTube. So I do have a YouTube channel for now.
Okay.
Um, I think there's a link to my blog on there. I need to get better with that. I know.
It's okay. Your book is available on Amazon.
Yeah, my book is available on Amazon. I have a hardcover, I have a soft cover, and it's also on Audibles.
Okay.
I narrate it, and it's even an ebook.
Okay.
So
All right. So what I'll do, I'll put all that information when I send the link to for this here podcast. I put all that information in there, so anybody need to find you, buy your book, listen to any of your podcasts to help them to go through their journey in faith, they definitely can find you. Thank you again, my beautiful sister. May Allah reward you and bless you and continue on your beautiful journey. Okay.
Amin.
All
Okay,
right.
salam
Assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.